The intentions of Yazid were buried in dust, yet the flag of Hussein still waves high today. Friends, today we are going to narrate to you the complete story of the incident of Karbala, whose beginning was not just with the sword, but with poison. Who poisoned Imam Hussain, A.S.? Who was his wife? At whose behest did his wife do this? What was the effect of the poison? What final will did Imam Hussain, A.S., give to his brother Hussein before his martyrdom? Why did he teach patience to Imam Hussain? And the biggest question, did Imam Hussain really go to Kufa to fight a war? Or did he set out with another purpose? Today, we will tell you how one brother drank poison to save the Ummah, and the other shed blood to save the religion. Friends, you must have seen many videos, but the detail, the truth, the pain that you will hear today, perhaps you have never heard it before. This story is not just to bring tears to the eyes, but to weep the hearts. The departure of Hazrat Ali, A.S., changed the world. That Ali, whose justice ruled the earth and whose actions were judged in the heavens. He became the target of a poisoned sword in the mihrab of Masjid-e-Kufa. The Ummah trembled, but the heir of truth remained. And that heir was Imam Hassan bin Ali, the grandson of the Prophet, about whom the Holy Prophet said, "Hassan and Hussein are pieces of my heart and leaders of the youth of paradise." Imam Hassan, A.S., organized an army of 12,000 loyal men and entered the battlefield. But the enemy was not only in front, it was within too. Muawiyah bought over Imam Hassan's commander, Abdullah bin Abbas, overnight, and he joined the enemy's camp with his forces. Meanwhile, Imam Hassan, A.S., was attacked as well. Someone from his own army stabbed him with a dagger, but the Imam survived. Then Imam Hassan, A.S., made a decision, one that would save bloodshed, a peace treaty, but with conditions. Imam Hassan, A.S., did not make peace by his own will, but to save the Ummah from bloodshed, he relinquished his caliphate by accepting a few conditions from Muawiyah. Muawiyah would act upon the Quran and Sunnah. He would not call himself Amir al-Mu'minin, leader of the believers. Oppression upon al-Bayt would be stopped. No harm would come to Imam Hassan, A.S., or Imam Hussain after him. After Imam Hassan, A.S., the caliphate would be returned to the al-Bayt. He would not appoint anyone as his successor, especially not Yazid. The caliphate would remain only apparent, not spiritual. Muawiyah accepted everything, but kept poison hidden in his heart. A few months later, Muawiyah stood on the pulpit and declared, "I made peace only for power. I accept no conditions, and I never will." And he announced Yazid as his successor. Now only one obstacle remained, Imam Hassan, A.S. Muawiyah knew he could not defeat Hassan, A.S., by the sword, so he plotted to defeat him with poison. And involved in this conspiracy was Imam Hassan's wife, Jada bint Ashath, daughter of Ashath bin Qais, a greedy and hypocritical woman. Muawiyah sent her a message. "If you poison Hassan, I will marry you to Yazid. Gold, palaces, slaves, everything will be yours." Jada took the poison and one day mixed it in a glass of milk or honey and presented it to Imam Hassan. As soon as the Imam took the first sip, his face turned pale, his body started trembling, and his liver began to burn. The Imam could not stand, his body drenched in sweat, and with every vomit, pieces of his liver began to come out. Friends, the effect of the poison was so severe that with each vomit, a piece of the liver would come out. According to some narrations, more than 70 pieces came out. And in those moments, Imam Hussain, A.S., sat at his brother's bedside, holding his hand, listening to his final will. Lady Zainab and the al-Bayt were sitting nearby. Imam Hassan, A.S., held the hand of his brother Hussein and said, "If the Ummah permits, then bury me beside the Prophet, for there is the fragrance of my grandfather, my mother Fatima, and my father Ali. But if there is a fear of discord, then bury me in Baqi, because I do not wish for the Ummah to shed blood because of me. Brother Hussein, let my patience become your sword. I drank poison in silence for the sake of the Ummah. You must shed blood for the sake of truth. Take Qasim, A.S., and with you. He is a piece of my heart. He is your trust in Karbala." On 28th Safar, 50 Hijri, the soul of Imam Hassan, A.S., departed. Medina became a place of mourning. The silent soil of Jannat al-Baqi embraced the grandson of the Prophet in its bosom. Friends, Imam Hassan, A.S., left after drinking poison, but the pain of his martyrdom remained suspended in the atmosphere of Medina. Medina, that city, whose streets once saw the Holy Prophet carry Hassan in his arms. And today the same. Hassan, while his liver was being torn apart, was ready to lie in the soil of Baqi. Imam Hussain, A.S., following the will of his brother, wished to take his funeral near the resting place of the Holy Prophet, so that a final peace could be offered from the place where he was raised in the arms of his grandfather. Al-Bayt were immersed in grief. Lady Zainab, Lady Kulthum, and other women of the household were with the funeral. But as soon as the funeral approached the sacred resting place of the Prophet, arrows were showered in the streets of Medina on the orders of Banu Umayyah. The first arrow towards the funeral came from the men of Marwan bin Hakam. Imam Hussain, A.S., looked at them with anger, then raised his eyes to the sky and said, "O those who shoot arrows at the funeral of Hassan, did you not think for a moment that this is the same face the Prophet used to kiss?" The arrows pierced the funeral stretcher. Blood began to stain the shroud. At last, Imam Hussain, A.S., turned the funeral back and buried Imam Hassan, A.S., in Jannat al-Baqi. The earth trembled, the sky fell silent. The grandson of the Prophet, who had made peace for the sake of the Ummah, who had drunk poison, was now buried in the soil of Baqi. Meanwhile, Jada bint Ashath, who had thought she would now become the queen of Yazid, sent a message to Muawiyah. "I have poisoned Hassan. Now fulfill your promise." Muawiyah laughed and replied, "She who could not remain loyal to her own husband, how can I trust she will remain loyal to Yazid?" He gave her some wealth and had her thrown into a desolate corner of Syria, where humiliation, sickness, and helplessness followed her. A few years later, she died like a madwoman, the woman who poisoned Imam Hassan, A.S., a beloved grandson of the Prophet, received neither honor in this world nor became the wife of Yazid. And in the hereafter, her face was deformed, her body began to rot, and she died of an illness like leprosy or in utter loneliness, in a place where people passed by cursing her. Curse be upon her and upon every conspiracy that was ever plotted against the Al-Bayt. Lady Zainab used to come to Baqi every night, sit at her brother's grave and say, "Brother Hassan, now I am alone. The storm that is about to come. Neither you are here, nor Father Ali, nor Mother Fatima." And Imam Hussain, A.S., remained silent. Sometimes he would visit Baqi. Sometimes he would look toward Karbala and say, "Brother Hassan, the religion for which you drank poison, for that same religion I will shed my blood." Now the time had come. Ibn Kathir, Tabari, and Ibn Asir all narrated the truth. Muawiyah broke the agreement and declared, "Forget the promises of peace. Now I will make Yazid the ruler. When Yazid's rule began taking over Medina, Yazid ordered the governor of Medina, take allegiance from Hussein. If he refuses, then take his head. Walid read the letter aloud, mentioned Yazid's name, and asked Imam Hussain, A.S., for allegiance. There was no anger in Imam Hussein's eyes, but the majesty of the Prophet. He said, Hussein cannot give allegiance to a man like Yazid, a sinner and transgressor. Imam Hussain, A.S., said, Yazid drinks wine, abandons prayers, indulges in open sin. How can such a person be the leader of the Muslims? Then Imam Hussain, A.S., left the court and immediately began preparations to leave Medina that very night. While departing from Medina, Imam Hussain, A.S., came to the grave of his mother, Lady Fatima al-Zahra. It is said he sat there and wept, placed his head on the grave and said, Mother, your son has refused allegiance to Yazid. I do not know when I shall return again. Then the Imam visited the Prophet's shrine, offered salutations, and with the intention of sacrifice, set out from Medina with the al-Bayt toward Makkah. Date: 28th. Rajab, 60 Hijri, Imam Hussain, A.S., arrived in Makkah. People welcomed the Imam. Letters began pouring in from Kufa, Basra, and other regions. O Hussein, come to us, we are with you. While staying in Makkah, Imam began preparations for Hajj, but Yazid had sent assassins into Makkah. They wore the robes of pilgrims and planned to kill the Imam during Tawaf. Imam said, I do not want the sanctity of the house of Allah to be violated. Therefore, changing Hajj into Umrah, Imam Hussain, A.S., announced his departure from Makkah towards Kufa on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. Before that, the Imam had sent his loyal brother Muslim bin Aqil to Kufa to assess the situation. The people of Kufa gave allegiance to Muslim in thousands and said, We are against Yazid, we will fight with you. Muslim wrote a letter to Imam Hussain, A.S. Come, O Master, here hearts and tongues are both with you. After reading this letter, the Imam made a decision and left Makkah on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. But in his heart was a restlessness, like the scent of sacrifice. Along with Imam Hussain, A.S., were his family members, companions, sons and daughters, nephews, and sisters. This journey was not just a geographical one, it was the final frontier between truth and falsehood. Yazid replaced the governor of Kufa and appointed Abdullah bin Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad was a tyrant, cunning, and deceitful. He silenced the people through murder, fear, and bribery. The people of Kufa abandoned Muslim. Muslim bin Aqil was martyred by being thrown from the roof of Dar al-Imara. His head was severed and sent to Yazid. Before his martyrdom, Muslim bin Aqil wrote one last message. O Mawla Hussein, Kufa has changed. When the caravan reached Sulaybiyah, or according to another narration, the place of Judah, a man came with tears in his eyes and news in his hands. He said, Mawla, Muslim bin Aqil has been martyred, and Hani bin Urwa too. Kufa is no longer the same for you. The Imam's face turned pale, his steps faltered, and he said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Muslim invited us, and by sacrificing his life, he clarified our path. Now Hussein, A.S., will answer Muslims' blood, not with a sword, but with sacrifice. Imam gathered the people of the caravan and said, Whoever wishes to return may do so. There is no compulsion from my side. Many people returned. But those who remained were the ones whom history calls Ashab-e Hussein. The Imam took the reins of his horse and said, Now our path leads to Karbala. The earth was silent, but the skies cried out. The caravan of sacrifice had set out. When the caravan of Imam Hussain, A.S., reached near Qasr Bani Muqatil, the first contingent of Yazid's army appeared, led by Hur bin Yazid, a brave yet commander of Yazid's forces. Hur approached and surrounded Imam Hussein's caravan and said, "I have orders to stop you and take you to Kufa." Imam Hussain, A.S., replied, "I have not come to fight. I have come only to reform the ummah of my grandfather. If you dislike my arrival, I will return." Hur replied, "My orders are neither to let you go forward nor return. The decision will now be made in the capital." Imam asked Hur a question. "Have you read my letters? Do you know your people of Kufa invited me?" Hur remained silent, for he knew the people of Kufa were now silent out of Yazid's fear. On 2nd Muharram, 61 Hijri, the caravan of Imam Hussain, A.S., was stopped on the barren land of Karbala. The Imam dismounted, looked at the land, picked up the soil, smelled it, and said, "This is the land where our blood will be spilled, where Sakina will sleep thirsty, where Abbas's arms will be severed." This land was Karbala, the symbol of grief, sacrifice, and truth. Imam ordered the tents to be set up. The army of Shimr was approaching, and Umar bin Saad's army had already camped at the edge of Karbala. Their numbers exceeded 3,000, while Imam Hussain, A.S., had only 72 loyal companions. On 7th Muharram, Ibn Saad took control of the Euphrates River and cut off the water supply to Imam Hussain, A.S., and his family. Hur watched this oppression. His heart trembled, but he was still in Yazid's army. The thirst of Lady Sakina, the sobs of children, the silence of the tents, all of this echoed in the air of Karbala. Imam Hussain, A.S., again and again called out to the army of Yazid. He was called, and the reason for refusing allegiance, Baya, was explained. He said, "If you let me return, I will go back. I have not come for war. If you do not agree, then the proof has been completed against me. Now only sacrifice remains." The one who came to stop Imam was now bowed before the court of conscience. He looked towards the sky, mounted his horse, and rode toward the camp of Imam Hussain, A.S. He was the first who came as a Yazidi and became a Hussaini. On the land of Karbala, the tents had been pitched. The Yazidi army had surrounded the camp and the water had been blocked. The thirst of the children turned into cries, but on the face of Imam Hussain, A.S., there was only patience, because before him was the light of truth. He was that commander who first came to block the Imam's path. But in his heart, he was not a Yazidi. He was just compelled by worldly command. As time passed, and when he saw the thirst of Lady Sakina, the silence of Abbas, and the prostrating gaze of the Imam, his heart began to tremble. Her R.A. dropped his sword, mounted his horse, and advanced toward the camp of the Imam. People saw that a soldier from the Yazidi army was now crying. He fell at the feet of the Imam and said, "Mawla, can my repentance be accepted?" Imam Hussain, A.S., placed his hand on his face and said, "Hur, you were born free, and today you are truly free." Imam Hussain, A.S., repeatedly sent letters and proofs to the Yazidi army. He said, "If you let me return to Medina, I will go. I do not wish for war. I want to avoid bloodshed." But Umar bin Saad had orders from Yazid. Hussein must either give bay'ah or his head be severed to save my throne. On the night of 9th Muharram, Imam Hussain, A.S., delivered his final sermon in front of the Yazidi army. "I am the grandson of the Messenger of Allah. Do you feel no shame in killing the grandson of the Prophet? If you kill me, how will you face the Prophet on the day of judgment?" But there was silence, for the army had become blind. Hearts were sealed, and only Yazid's command remained. It was the night of 9th Muharram. The moon was bright, but the tents were silent. Imam gathered all his companions, extinguished the lamp, and said, "I lift the oath of allegiance. Tomorrow, only Hussein will be martyred. You may go." But all replied together, "No, Mawla, we will stay with you. We will be sacrificed for you." That night, Lady Sakina fell asleep holding Imam Hussein's neck. Suddenly, she woke up and said, "Baba, I saw in a dream someone snatching away my veil." Imam Hussain, A.S., embraced his daughter and said, "Sakina, tomorrow the world will snatch many things from us, but your Baba will teach you patience." Morning arrived. Ali Akbar gave the adhan. Imam Zainul Abidin led the prayer. Imam Hussain, A.S., picked up his sword. For now, all hopes of peace had ended, and only the path of martyrdom remained. On the 10th of Muharram, 61 AH, the sun of Ashura rose over the land of Karbala. But the light of this sun shimmered with blood. Imam Hussain, A.S., spent the night in worship. At dawn, he gathered his family and said, "O my beloveds, today Allah will accept from you such a sacrifice the like of which shall never be found until the day of judgment." At sunrise, Imam Hussain, A.S., arranged his ranks. The companions and al-Bayt were stationed before their respective tents. The enemy army numbered over 3,000, while Hussein's loyal group was only 72. First, the Imam completed the argument, Hujjat. Again and again, he offered peace. But Umar bin Saad gave the order to attack. The first assault took place. One by one, the companions of Hussein entered the battlefield and were martyred. When all the companions had been martyred, the young son of the Imam, Ali Akbar, mounted his horse. His face was such that it resembled the reflection of the Messenger of Allah. The Imam said, "O Allah, I send this young man into the battlefield, the one who resembles your messenger the most in face, speech, and character." Ali Akbar mounted his horse and charged upon the enemy. He sent countless Yazidis to hell, but the intensity of thirst overwhelmed him. He turned toward the tents and said, "Baba, thirst has drained my strength." Imam Hussain, A.S., embraced his son and extended his tongue, hoping to lessen his thirst, but even the tongue was dry. He said, "My son, in a little while, your grandfather, the Prophet, will quench your thirst." Ali Akbar returned to the battlefield. A spear pierced his chest, the horse lost control, and Ali Akbar fell to the ground. He cried out, "Baba, peace be upon you!" Imam rushed into the battlefield, lifted Ali Akbar's body and said, "When a father must carry the corpse of his young son, what greater day of judgment can there be?" Now came Qasim, the young son of Imam Hassan, A.S., only 13 years old, a face like the moon, a heart like a lion. He sought permission to fight. Imam refused, saying, "My son, you are the memory of my brother." Qasim presented the will of his father. "O my brother Hussein, when the day of Karbala comes, give my son Qasim the chance for sacrifice." Upon reading it, tears flowed from Imam Hussein's eyes, and he allowed Qasim to enter the battlefield. Qasim displayed the qualities of a brave warrior. But the enemy attacked from all sides. One Yazidi cut the reins of his horse. Qasim, A.S., fell to the ground and cried out, "Uncle, peace be upon you." Imam Hussain, A.S., rushed forward, pushed the enemies aside, lifted Qasim's severed body into his arms and said, "My son, after your martyrdom, even death will laugh at Hussein." When Imam Hussain buried Ali Akbar with his own hands and turned toward the tents, Sayyida Zainab came forward, her face dimmed with grief, her heart heavy with her son's loss, but her lips only said, "Brother Hussein, I am Zainab. If today my sons are not sacrificed, how will I face our mother Fatima Zahra tomorrow?" Sayyida Zainab's sons, Aun and Muhammad, came to Imam Hussain A.S. after receiving their mother's permission. They were young in age, short in height, but bold enough to hold swords. Both brothers said to Imam Hussain, "Uncle, let us go into the battlefield. We wish to be sacrificed for you." Imam lowered his gaze and at first refused, but Sayyida Zainab's eyes were fixed upon him. The Imam sighed and said, "All right, my brave lions, go. Fatima Zahra is watching you." First, Muhammad went to the battlefield, his blood boiling, his heart ablaze with the truth. He declared before the enemies, "I am the grandson of Hassan, who made peace with Muawiyah, but with Yazid I will not make a peace of disgrace." Muhammad sent many enemies to hell, but eventually was surrounded by swords and fell to the ground. Now it was Aun's turn. He saw his brother's body. Tears fell from his eyes, but his steps did not falter. Aun mounted his horse and said, "O killers of Muhammad, now Aun comes." Aun, A.S., fought valiantly and struck with bravery, but he was too young, too physically weak, and the enemy was far too many. Eventually, Aun too was martyred. Imam Hussain, A.S., came into the field, lifted the bodies of both children, and slowly made his way toward the tents. At the entrance of the tents, Sayyida Zainab was waiting. Imam placed the bodies on the ground, lowered his head, and said, "Zainab, your sons have succeeded." Zainab looked at the blood-covered faces of her sons. No tears fell from her eyes. Instead, she looked to the sky and said, "O Allah, accept the sacrifice of Zainab." These were Aun and Muhammad, who gave their youth for their mother's upbringing, their uncle's mission, and their grandfather's religion. Now the support of Imam Hussein's heart remained. His brother, his standard-bearer, Hazrat Abbas, R.A. Abbas looked toward the battlefield, then toward the tents, then at Imam Hussain and said, "Mawla, now grant me permission." Abbas could not bear the thirst of Sakina. Imam's heart trembled. Crying, he said, "Abbas, you are the standard-bearer of my army. If you go, the tents will be left unprotected." But Abbas, with lowered eyes, pleaded, "Mawla, the army has already perished. Now only the thirst of Lady Sakina remains." Imam Hussain gave him permission. Hazrat Abbas mounted his horse, the flag in one hand, the sword on his shoulder, and only one prayer in his heart. "O Lord, I must bring water back for Sakina." Abbas broke through the ranks of the Yazidi soldiers and reached the river Euphrates. He drew water with his spear. As he brought it close to his lips, a voice rose from his heart. "Abbas, how can you drink when Hussein, Sakina, and Ali Asghar are thirsty?" He poured the water back and filled the mashk, water bag. Abbas turned his horse around. The Yazidi soldiers were waiting in ambush. One struck and severed his right arm. Abbas took the mashk in his left hand and said, "O soul of Abbas, do not fear. Only an arm is gone." A second strike came. His left arm too was cut off. Abbas held the mashk in his teeth and galloped toward the tents, because Lady Sakina's thirst cried louder. But one cursed enemy struck with an iron pole, hitting Abbas's head. He fell to the ground and cried out, "O my master Hussein, peace be upon you." Imam Hussain ran and sat beside Abbas's severed body. He said, "Abbas, take me with you. My back is broken now." Abbas pleaded, "Brother, my eyesight is fading. Do not carry my body to the tents. Let Sakina not see my severed arms." Oh friends, this is that Abbas, A.S., who is called Bab ul Hawaj, the door to needs, the one who taught loyalty even to water and brought shame even to Karbala. Abbas's mosque was empty, but the book of sacrifice was filled forever. It was noon in Karbala. The sun was at its peak. There was a deep silence in the tents. Only the sobs of suffering children could be heard. From that silence came the sigh of Lady Rubab. Maula, Ali Asghar is writhing in thirst. His body is turning cold. Please do something. Imam Hussain took Ali Asghar from Lady Rubab's lap, cradled him, looked at his lips, caressed his neck, and gently stepped out of the tent. He came before the army of Yazid. Neither did he carry a sword, nor was there wrath on his tongue. He simply raised his 6-month-old Ali Asghar and said, "O people, if you are enemies of Hussein, then so be it. But have mercy on this innocent, speechless child. He is thirsty. What harm has he done to you?" Seeing this scene, silence overtook the Yazidi army. No one moved, no one blinked. At that very moment, when Imam Hussain raised Ali Asghar high, Asghar moved his dry little finger, a silent gesture as if saying, "Give me water." That scene, that finger, that silent question shook the hearts of the Yazidi soldiers. Many lowered their spears. Tears welled in the eyes of some soldiers. A silent rebellion began in the army. When Ibn Sa'd saw the change on the faces of his soldiers, when he saw their eyes soften, he became frightened. He screamed, "Hurmala! Hussein's words are weakening the army. Quickly, shoot the arrow." Hurmala placed a 3-pronged, poisoned arrow on his bow. In the next moment, he fired the arrow. It struck the delicate neck of Ali Asghar. Imam's hands filled with blood. He did not blink. He uttered no cry. He looked toward the sky and gently said, "O my Lord, even this sacrifice of Hussein is for your pleasure." He did not let the blood fall to the ground. He opened his hands and flung the blood toward the sky. He said, "O earth, bear witness. O sky, you too bear witness. Hussein has sacrificed Ali Asghar for you." Imam dug a small grave and buried Asghar. When he returned to the tent, Lady Sakina ran to him and asked, "Baba, where is Asghar? Will he play with me?" Imam hugged her to his chest and softly said, "My daughter, Asghar is now in Jannah. He is playing with the children." That scene which turned Karbala into Qiyamah. The arrow that martyred a suckling child tore through the heart of humanity. Silence had overtaken the sands of Karbala. One by one, every prince, every brother, every companion had fallen before the eyes of Hussein on the soil of Karbala. There were still sobs in the tents. Children remained. But now, in the battlefield, Hussein, A.S., stood alone. The sun had risen higher, the sand had grown hotter, and the earth called out, "O Hussein, now is the time to accept you too." Imam Hussain, A.S., held the reins of his horse, but then a voice came, "Brother, wait!" Lady Zainab came running. The veil was hanging from her head, her back bent with grief. She held the reins of the Imam's horse and said, "Brother, after today I will have no shadow. How can my heart accept that you are departing?" The Imam embraced his sister, kissed her forehead and said, "Zainab, my heart trembles at your voice, but in Karbala, this is destiny." Imam Hussain mounted the back of Zuljana and turned toward the army, but Zuljana could not move, because Lady Sakina had clung to its feet. "Baba, where are you going? Asghar just left, and now you are going too?" Imam Hussain opened his hands and said, "Daughter, Baba is also going, but I have brought a swing for you in Jannah." Imam Hussain, A.S., entered the battlefield and called out, "Is there anyone who recognizes me? I am the grandson of the Prophet, son of Ali, the light of Fatima." But in reply, swords were raised, spears turned toward him, and the lone Hussein entered a sea of soldiers. It is mentioned in many narrations. Imam Hussain, A.S., had over 70 wounds. Spears, swords, arrows, all had torn through his body. And with each wound, Imam cried, "Oh, grandfather, look, Hussein has fulfilled his promise." When the body of Hussein began to tremble from the wounds, Zuljana turned back toward the tents. Imam Hussain, A.S., looked to the sky and said, "O Lord, if this sacrifice pleases you, then Hussein is content." Then Imam Hussain, A.S., prostrated upon the ground and accepted martyrdom in that state. At that moment, Shimmer drew his dagger and moved toward the neck of Imam Hussain. Lady Zainab came out of the tent and turned toward the hills, crying, "O Prophet of Medina, your grandson is being slaughtered in prostration." Zuljana ran back toward the tents, without Imam Hussain. When Lady Sakina saw the riderless horse, she began to weep. "Baba has left me too? Will I die thirsty?" The sands of Karbala bear witness. This was no battle, it was a massacre. Imam Hussain, A.S., was martyred, but Yazid died in the conscience of history. In the field of Karbala, there was silence, but the oppression was not yet over. The body of Imam Hussain, A.S., lay upon the sand, shroudless and unburied. His blessed head had been severed. Shimmer bent down and separated the head of the Prophet's grandson from his body. It is written in Maktal. The dagger had become dull. Shimmer had to strike 12 times before the head was severed. The head was raised and placed in a black bag. On the order of Ibn Sa'd, the head of Hussein was mounted upon a spear. The tents were set ablaze. The children were shackled in chains. The veils were snatched from the heads of the noble women. Imam Zain ul-Abidin, who was severely ill, was also chained and made to ride a camel. Lady Zainab folded her hands and said, "Do what you will, but do not raise a hand against the daughters of the Prophet." The caravan departed. On the spears was the head of Imam Hussain. And Lady Zainab, Lady Sakina, Lady Kulthum, all were in chains, their heads uncovered. Lady Sakina kept saying, "Mother, that is Baba's face, isn't it? Why is it raised high on a spear? Baba used to speak to us while sitting low." When the caravan reached Kufa, a spectacle was made in the markets. Some remained silent, some wept, and said, "Is this the same Hussein whose henna the Prophet had applied in Medina?" Lady Zainab said to the guards, "Give us a veil. We are the daughters of the Prophet." But a voice echoed, "This is the order of Yazid. The heads shall remain uncovered." In the Grand Mosque of Kufa, while people were raising slogans, Lady Zainab hid her face with the corner of her veil and stood upon the pulpit. The same voice as Ali's, the same tone, the same might. "O people of Kufa, you killed Hussein, and now you weep, showing regret? You stain the earth with blood and think you have purchased paradise?" All of Kufa fell into silence. Imam Zain ul-Abidin was in chains continuously. Fever on his face, wounds upon his body. When a Kufan asked, "O young man, who are you?" the Imam lowered his head and said, "I am the one whose father you martyred, whose brothers you slaughtered, and whose aunt's veil you snatched." Now the caravan moved from Kufa toward Sham. On the way, they faced stones, insults, mockery. Wherever the caravan passed, people were told, "These are the ones who rebelled against Yazid." But Lady Zainab and Imam Zain ul-Abidin raised the voice of truth everywhere and declared, "We didn't come to rebel. We came to awaken the Ummah." People climbed walls and rooftops to see. Someone asked, "Who are these people? What crime have they committed?" The oppressors replied, These are the ones who rose against Yazid. When Lady Zainab heard this, she hid her face with her veil, and with power in her voice declared, "This is a lie. We didn't rise in rebellion. We came to unveil falsehood." Little Lady Sakina, sitting on the saddle of the camel, kept asking, "Mother, where is Baba?" Baba used to say he would never leave Sakina alone. Lady Rubab cried out in agony. Lady Zainab's heart felt like bursting. The caravan was brought into the court of Kufa's governor, Ibn Ziyad. On a spear was the head of Hussein. Ibn Ziyad mocked and laughed and asked Imam Zain ul Abidin, "What is your name?" The Imam replied, "I am Ali." Ibn Ziyad said, "I have killed Ali." The ill Imam Zain ul Abidin replied, "My father's name is Ali, my uncle's name is Ali, and my grandfather's name is also Ali. How many Alis will you kill?" Ibn Ziyad summoned Lady Zainab and mockingly asked, "Zainab, how has Allah treated you?" Lady Zainab stood tall, covered her wounded face with her veil, and said, "I have seen nothing but loyalty, sacrifice, and patience." "You think you have won? You will soon see tyrants like you will perish, but the name of Hussein will live on in every prostration." The entire court fell silent. Ibn Ziyad ordered Lady Zainab to be imprisoned. The caravan was taken to the dark, narrow prison of Kufa. Lady Zainab, Lady Kulthum, Lady Sugra, Lady Sakina, Imam Zain ul Abidin, all were in chains. Nights in agony, days in hunger. Lady Zainab would cradle Lady Sakina in her lap and sing lullabies. "Sakina, be patient. Your Baba is waiting for you in Jannah with a swing." In the palaces of Sham, there was commotion. Yazid sat on the throne, and in front of him was the head of the Prophet's grandson, Imam Hussain. The caravan was brought forward. Lady Zainab, bareheaded, tired, but her face was radiant. Imam Zain ul Abidin, Lansima. Little Sakina, with weary eyes, looked all around. Yazid mocked and said, "Zainab, do you see what we have done to your brother?" Lady Zainab stood, bowed her head, adjusted her veil, pointed toward the pulpit and said, "O Yazid, you think you have defeated us? No, you have committed oppression. You have laid the foundation of tyranny, and we have raised the flag of truth. You have not won, and we have not lost. This time shall pass, but the prostration of Hussein shall remain." The entire court fell silent. Yazid lowered his gaze. The night had grown deep in Sham. In the darkness of a cold, desolate cell, on the bare floor, a little girl, Lady Sakina, sat bareheaded, hungry, with a wounded heart, sobbing in the memory of her father Hussein. Lady Zainab wiped her tears many times with the edge of her veil, but these were tears that could only stop upon her father's chest. Lady Sakina's sobs grew louder. Again and again, she shook her mother Rubab and said, "Mother, when will Baba return?" Baba said he would never leave Sakina alone. "Mother, isn't Baba taken too long?" Rubab held her daughter to her chest, placed the edge of her chador on her face, and cried, "Daughter, Baba is waiting for you with a swing at the throne of paradise." Oh, listeners, that little girl, for whose thirst the river wept, whose cries shook the sands of Karbala, who once held her father's finger, was now imprisoned in the dungeon. That night, Lady Sakina's sobs grew so intense that Yazid's sleep broke. Startled, he asked his courtiers, "Why is that prisoner girl crying?" They replied, "She is Hussein's daughter. She weeps in her father's separation. She does not sleep, only cries." Yazid shouted, "Get rid of her sorrow. Go, take Hussein's head to her." Soon, in a tray, the blessed head of Imam Hussain was brought. Dust on the hair, the blood on the face had dried within the silk. Lady Sakina did not understand much, only said, "Whose head is this? It looks like Baba." When Lady Zainab wept and said, "Sakina, this is your Baba Hussein's head." Lady Sakina immediately took the head from the tray, placed it in her little lap, kissed the forehead, and cried bitterly, Baba, you used to say you would never leave your daughter alone. What kind of promise was this? Lady Sakina's eyes began to close. Her back was wounded by the bites of chains, her hair filled with dust, and in her sleep she smiled. Suddenly, a voice came from her lips. Baba, you've come? Baba, give me water. Baba, your chest is again for me, isn't it? Lady Rubab was startled. Lady Zainab bent down, kissed Sakina's forehead, but her face was cold. Slowly, her breath stopped. Sakina, my child, Lady Rubab's cry echoed. The entire prison turned into mourning. Lady Zainab took Sakina in her lap, wrapped her in her chadar, and raised her head to the sky. O Lord, accept one more sacrifice. Now even Lady Sakina has joined you. When Yazid heard that Lady Sakina had died in captivity, it is narrated that he expressed regret, but gave neither a funeral nor a shroud. Only a mat was given, and Lady Sakina's body was buried within the prison. According to some traditions, she was buried in the courtyard of the prison. The caravan then headed toward Medina. Other narrations mention that before returning to Medina, Lady Zainab stopped the caravan and gave Sakina a farewell. She had once slept on her father's chest. Now she slept in the prison dust. Sakina received no shroud, no water, no shade, only the soil of captivity. The day was ending. The winds in Medina stood still. The same Medina whose streets once echoed with the laughter of Hassan and Hussein. Now, at the gates of that very Medina, the caravan arrived. But in it, there was no Imam Hussain, no Imam Qasim, no Imam Abbas, no Imam Ali Akbar. Only torn veils, wounds, and memories. When the people of Medina heard that the caravan of Al-Bayt was returning from Sham, they all ran toward the city gates. Old men, youth, women, children. But all had the same question. Where is Lady Zainab? Where is Imam Hussain? Where is Imam Abbas? Where is Imam Ali Akbar? When Lady Zainab stepped at the gate of Medina, she fell to the ground and wept. O Medina, your beloved son has not returned. I am your daughter Zainab. But my head is bare, my heart is torn, and the shade of my brothers is gone. In the courtyard of Masjid al-Nabawi, people had gathered. All eyes were on Imam Zainul Abidin, freed from chains, whose weakness, tears in his eyes, and the light on his face spoke volumes. The Imam stepped onto the pulpit. In a soft, tired yet glowing voice, he said, O people, do you know who we are? We are the ones upon whose heads the Quran was revealed. We are the ones upon whom Allah sends His peace. We are the ones whose pain brought down Jibreel. You may have heard of the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, but what we went through cannot be described by the tongue. O people of Medina, Imam Hussain was slaughtered before our very eyes. The tent trembled over the corpse of Qasim. A spear was thrust into Akbar's chest, and Abbas's arms were severed. And we were made a spectacle in captivity. Lady Sakina's lifeless body writhed on the prison floor, and Lady Zainab stood in the court before my father's severed head. People sitting in the masjid sobbed. Some beat their heads against the walls, some cried out in pain. Lady Zainab turned toward Medina and said, O Medina, I am the same Zainab who once walked wrapped in veils. Today, I return bearing the mourning of Karbala, a witness to Hussein's sacrifice. Yazid died, but the name of Hussein lives on. Time lost, but Hussein lives on. Though the body was torn apart, the lamp of Hussein kept burning. Friends, if we only mention the blood-soaked sands of Karbala but do not tell what happened to the tyrant Yazid, then this incident remains incomplete. It was at that moment Yazid sat alone for the first time and thought, did I truly have the grandson of the Prophet killed? Yazid kept telling his close courtiers. I wish things had not happened this way with Hussein. All I wanted was to maintain my rule. But Shimr and Ibn Ziyad ruined everything. But the truth was, all orders had been given by Yazid himself. He was the very creator of Karbala's fire. Hatred against Yazid began to spread. In Medina, Makkah, Kufa, people stopped visiting his court. Even his own generals began to excuse themselves. We can no longer support you. From then on, Yazid drowned himself in alcohol every night, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes uttering the name of Imam Hussain. Outwardly, Yazid won in Karbala. But Allah wrote such an end for him that he died a dog's death. Drunken, naked, without a final prayer, without honor. In his drinking gatherings, he mocked the sunnah of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. He abandoned even Salah. Many times in his drunken state, he laughed over the captivity of Lady Zainab and the Ahlul Bayt. Yazid began hiding in a deep cellar of his palace. No light, no air, no people, only wine bottles, a dog, and his monkey for company. One day, his condition worsened. He lay in that cellar, burning with fever, uttering not Allah's name but cries of, Hussein, Hussein. His clothes were drenched in wine and pus, the stench so awful no one dared sit near him. Yazid kept rolling on the floor, crying, Forgive me, Hussein. I did not kill you. It was Shimr. But even these screams were not accepted. He kept recalling the words of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, but no sincere repentance emerged from his heart. Only regret, only sorrow. Some historians write, when Yazid's corpse was taken for burial, a dog licked his feet, and people threw stones at him. He who martyred pure Hussein in thirst was given neither the kalima, nor the adhan, nor salvation. Many faces were involved in this oppression. Some struck spears, some burned tents, some loosed arrows at innocent throats. But in the divine court of the Lord of Hussein, none escaped justice. Now let us mention those tyrants whose hands were soaked in Karbala's blood and upon whom descended the wrath of Allah. Shimr the accursed, Shimr, the one who severed the head, a name that became the symbol of tyranny. The one who placed a dagger on the neck of the grandson of the Prophet while he was in prostration. That very Shimr, when he returned to Kufa, people saw not peace but terror on his face. He would scream, My neck is burning, save me! The fire is wrapping around me. When he was locked in an asylum, his screams would shake the walls. He could neither eat nor sleep. His body would tremble with jolts. And one day he died in agony, writhing from the pain of the fire. It is said, his corpse was given neither ghusl nor a shroud nor a grave. His body was thrown in the alleys of Kufa, and children pelted it with stones. Harmala bin Kahil, the one who struck with the arrow, Harmala, the man who with a three-pronged arrow martyred 6-month-old Ali Asghar, A.S., while he lay in the lap of Imam Hussain, A.S. It is said, after Karbala, his body would feel like burning in snow. Day and night he would scream, My hands are soaked in blood. This arrow is stuck to me. When Hazrat Mukhtar Saqafi, R.A., rose in revolt, Harmala was found and arrested. Mukhtar asked him, Tell me, Harmala, what crime had Ali Asghar committed? Harmala remained silent, but worms began to crawl from his mouth. Then Mukhtar gave the order. Kill him in the same way he killed. 3 arrows were shot at Harmala, the first in the throat, the second in the chest, and the third in the eye. After that, he was burned alive in fire. YouTube family, this was our small attempt, based on the grief, sacrifice, and patience of Karbala. If this message touched your heart, please write in the comments, Labaik ya Hussain. So the world knows Imam Hussain, A.S., is still alive and the truth is still awakened. And if you wish that we continue delivering such heartfelt, truthful messages to you, then please like, share, and subscribe to the video. Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon the people of Karbala. Peace be upon Bibi Zainab, Bibi Sakina, Imam Abbas, Imam Ali Akbar, and Imam Hussain, A.S.